Hello again, friends, and welcome back to part 2 of our week-long series on mental health. Don't forget to check out yesterday's video on loneliness, tomorrow's on eating disorders, and Friday's on what you can eat to help stabilize your moods. And today we're going to talk about anxiety. I will never forget my first panic attack. I didn't know it was a panic attack. I was on a speaking tour in my little old red PT Cruiser, and I was driving from LA to Rifle, Colorado. My car had been having some troubles, and so I was a little nervous about the long drive, and I decided to try and avoid the Rocky Mountains, which if you know anything about geography, you cannot avoid the Rocky Mountains. They are unavoidable. They go straight down our country. So I drove south all the way through to Arizona, and by that time it's about 4 in the afternoon, and I suddenly realized that the route I'm going is actually going to take me over the Rockies not once but twice. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop my route and I'm going to go straight up here. So I cut up, and at first it was like gorgeous, like one of the most beautiful drives I have ever taken in my entire life. Like the canyons, the rocks, the sun started setting, it was my favorite colors, like it was gorgeous. But as time went on and it got darker and darker and I got further and further away from civilization, there was like nothing there. Like nobody, nothing, no gas stations, no towns, like just me and the canyons. And then I lost cell service. And then I lost my GPS. And I remember freaking out. I was like, my car's gonna die. I'm gonna be stranded on the side of the road and either abducted into sex trafficking by all the people who are not here to abduct me, or eaten by wild animals. I'm left for dead on the side of the road. Those were my thoughts. And I was like, my heart's pounding, my heart hurts, like my arms feel a little like tingly, my head's pounding, I'm getting like kind of dizzy, and I was like having a hard time breathing, and I started thinking, I'm dying. Like I am literally having a heart attack and dying in the middle of nowhere. So a little while later, I passed this random hotel and I just pulled in and went inside, and I was so nervous that I was gonna be like abducted from there, but it was better than continuing to drive. And so I was so cold, I was shaking, like my whole body was just shaking uncontrollably. And so I got in a scalding hot shower and I get out and I'm still shaking. So I get back in a scalding hot shower and I get out and I'm still shaking. So I take 3 ridiculously warm showers. I cannot get warm. My heart feels super weird, and I call my dad. Thankfully I had cell service from that hotel, and I was like, Dad, I think I'm having a heart attack and dying. And I told him what was happening, and he was like, I think you're actually having a panic attack. And that was my first ever panic attack, but it was not my last. I had always struggled with anxiety, but I never knew it. And as I traveled, I struggled with more and more of it. I wasn't a lot of fun to be around because I was so uptight all the time and so nervous of something bad happening. And I had so much just anxiety, but I didn't know that's what it was. I just thought it was normal to feel that way. Well, about 1.5 years ago, I went to my doctor and I was told her about some symptoms I was having that I thought had to do with something being wrong with my heart. And as she listened to my symptoms, she was like, you don't have anything wrong with your heart. What you have is anxiety, and you're having panic attacks. And the reason you're so tired all the time is because you're living in a constant state of panic and anxiety, and that's exhausting on your body. It's like being stuck in this fight or flight mode and you can't get out of it. And so she kind of laid out my options. She's like, there's medication for this, or you can do like a self-study, find ways to use mindfulness and other things to cope with it. You can go and talk to a counselor. Like, I love my doctor, she's awesome. So I wasn't like opposed to medication, but I get super nervous about meds because I've had allergic reactions to medications before, and it is not fun. My anxiety will get worse if I'm taking this anxiety medication, so no. So I started reading about it, and I was just totally blown away by what I read. I'd read these checklists of like symptoms of anxiety, and I was like, oh my word, I have like all the symptoms of anxiety, and I had no idea, like literally no idea. And I remember telling my family and my husband, and they were like, you seriously didn't know you had anxiety? Like, we've known for years. You didn't know? And I was like, why didn't you tell me? And they're like, how did you not know? So over the last 1.5 years, I've been on this journey to try and figure out how to deal with my anxiety and how to make it more manageable, but also to overcome it. And it's been a lot of work, but I want to share with you some things that have worked for me and some things that have not worked for me. So the first thing I started doing was focusing on my lifestyle, the food I was eating, how much sleep I was getting, and working out. I have not done a very good job throughout my life of taking care of my body. I've kind of just eaten what I remember to eat and whatever's in front of me, which often is not super nutritious. Like I used to consist on microwavable veggies with cheese melted on them for dinner at night. as I was reading about anxiety, I found that if your blood sugar is constantly spiking, you're just constantly going up and down because you're not eating at regular times or you're not eating food that's really good for you, that's gonna make your anxiety worse. So I started trying to eat regular times every day, remembered to eat, and eat food that was really good for me. I also started working out more. My best friend asked me to run a 5K with her, and so we started training for it, and I hated it at first. I was miserable to run with, but my husband was so kind. He was my running buddy, my running coach, because my best friend lives a few hours away. And we did it, and I ran my 5K, and I started getting hooked on it. Because at first when I started working out, I did not feel better. People were like, oh, there's a runner's high. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. You are clearly high on something else because there is no runner's high. But eventually I started feeling stronger and empowered by it. And I don't know that I've ever gotten a high from working out. I've never experienced that, but I love it now because I just feel so strong and like empowered by it. And like, I can do this. Actually, some recent research has been finding that exercise is one effective way of treating anxiety. So I've started working out and then sleeping well, because that's another key component in working with anxiety is getting enough sleep. So part of that is planning how you go to sleep at night. Like if you're looking at electronics, what you're doing right before bed. So what I like to do now is read a book, not like an adventure novel, because then I will never go to sleep. I'll just stay up and finish the book, but instead like a thought-provoking book or historical book. It's interesting enough to read, but not so interesting that I can't put it down in 20 minutes. And I also cut myself off from working after 8 p.m. because if I'm thinking about work after 8 p.m., I will not be able to shut my brain off to go to sleep. So that was the first thing, focusing on having a healthy lifestyle. And surprisingly, that helps a lot with anxiety. It's just having your body in balance. The second thing I started doing was practicing mindfulness. So I'd always heard about mindfulness and thought it was like, sounded a little weird and new agey. I was a little judgy about it, but then I found out what it is. And it's essentially just bringing your mind and awareness back to the present moment. Being aware of what's happening around you, like slowing down your mind. Because when you struggle with anxiety, it's like your mind is just rapid fire and it's hard to stop long enough to just like be aware of what's even happening. And sometimes I'll do it in yoga. I love yoga because it's like you have to focus on what you're doing and you can't be thinking about anything else. It's like a calming focus. So I have a video that I did with a friend who's really good with mindfulness and it's linked right up here, but that was really helpful for me. And that brings me to the third thing that helped, which was remembering how huge God is. I did this study with Beth Moore on the Psalms of Ascent called Stepping Up. God spoke to me a lot through that study about how He is my protector and my keeper. And I get so scared because I'm so afraid when life gets out of my control or when I don't know what's gonna happen. Just remembering who God is. Like He is loving, He is huge, He's kind, He's sovereign. Like reminding myself of that helps to still my heart. He is my protector and my keeper. And then the fourth thing that really helps is gratitude and just taking the time to thank God for all the ways He has kept me and provided for me. When I'm afraid or when I'm anxious about something, I can just remember, but here's what God's already done for me. Like this is the track record that God has. Like it's pretty incredible. So I'm just gonna trust Him again. And then the fifth thing was going to counseling. And I cannot tell you enough how much this has been life-changing for me. Counseling really helped me to get to the root of some of those issues. Like, why are you so anxious about this in particular? Let's see where that comes from. How do you handle it when that comes up? I highly recommend getting a really wise, awesome counselor to talk through this stuff with. And it might take you a few tries to find a counselor you really click with and he's really good. But finding that person is like, oh my goodness, amazing. And if you can't do counseling, like I know some insurance plans don't cover it and it's too expensive. If that's your case, then find an adult who's really wise and trustworthy and talk with them. I have a video linked up here that talks about how to find a mentor, how to find that adult you can talk with. And that brings me to the last thing. Number 6 is just being willing to talk about it. Like when I'm feeling anxious, I talk about it. I tell my husband, I'm feeling really nervous that I'm gonna have my throat close up right now and I'm gonna die because I just ate this food I've never eaten before. Like that's a very real fear for me. And so just being able to vocalize that helps a lot. The 2 things that I've tried that have not helped me were number 1, denial, like saying there's not a problem here, I'm really fine, it's all normal. That was not helpful, but it's easy to do. And number to thinking that the problem is just spiritual. There is a spiritual side to a lot of problems, but a lot of problems are also more than just spiritual. Like, we are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual human beings, and some problems have to do with the biology of our body. Like, sometimes depression or anxiety has to do with like hormones being off or our body is out of balance. One last thing I'll say is sometimes I have to push myself to do things I'm scared of, and I've learned that I'm still okay and I'm still alive, and even if I weren't alive, I'd be with Jesus. That helps me too, to push myself out of my comfort zone and not stay stuck. And I promise this is really the last one. I think sometimes we focus so much on beating the anxiety that we're just still focusing on the anxiety and it becomes all we can see. So I try to do things that just totally distract me from it. Like, I deal with it, but then I also have to do things that take my eyes off of it. Reaching out to a friend who I know is struggling, read a book that I love, or spend some time with God to just get my mind off of it entirely. Those are the things that have helped me, and I would love to hear from you girls. This is still something I struggle with. It has gotten like so much better. Like, my panic attacks are way less often than they used to be, and the anxiety is so much better. Like, my husband, my family, my friends have all commented on it like, wow, you're way less stressed and anxious than you have been like ever. It's truly amazing like how far God has brought me in the last year and a half. But yeah, please do comment your thoughts below. Is this something you struggle with? And if so, what helps you? Because I want to read your comments and learn from them. And check out each other's comments. I'll be doing that too, and then we can kind of get ideas from each other and try them. So thanks for being with me. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to talk about eating disorder recovery, and on Friday to talk about what foods you can eat to help your moods. So see you then. Love you girls. Bye.